Charity. Hear my words, O man, and be considerate of the justice of thy Creator. These are my exhibits which I place before thee. Thou shalt make no mistake. And if thou be a rich man, and adorn a city by donating it unto a park, with statues and pleasure walks, hoping to glorify thyself thereby, and be praised by men, I therein thyself bury thyself in the lower heavens, and the act lowers thy grade instead of raising it. For in whosoever thou givest, thou shalt consider first the lowest of the low, whether they have bread to eat and a place to sleep, and the sick, whether they have attendance and good provision. And thou be a rich man, and contribute a house for orphans or the helpless and aged who cannot help themselves, it raises thee in grade. But so far as thou doest this for the applause of men, thou detracts from the raise of thy benefits. Neither does such a good work help thee more than a poor man helps his own grave by assisting one poor orphan. For the resurrection depends not on the quantity thou givest, but as to whether thou givest according to what thou hast, of which manner you can judge yourself. For he who gives a penny may be raised up more by so doing than he that gives 10,000 times that. A certain rich man, being converted from the desires of the earth, went about casting his money freely in the streets, and giving it to whosoever asked him for. And some gathered it up, and fed and clothed themselves. Others took of it, and went and got drunk, and became worse than before. The measure of righteousness of that man's behaviour was not in giving what he had to the poor, but in the good and evil that came of it, being weighed, as to which outbalanced the other. And where he lowered the grade of them that received this money, or where he lowered a greater number than he raised, then his act of casting money away was judgment against him. He who gives, saying, "Here, beggar," does a good physical act, but an evil spiritual act. He lifted up with one hand, but knocked down with the other. Such an act detracts from the grade of that man. A certain rich man, being converted to do good works, went and built a score of soup houses to feed the poor, and all the poor people of that town went therein and were fed. But the next year, behold, there were twice as many poor. And the rich man built another score of soup houses, and they were all fed. But the next year there were still twice as many poor people to feed, but the rich man had exhausted his means and could feed none at all. Judgment is therefore rendered against that man for his supposed beneficence, his charity. For whilst he did a little corporeal good, he did a great spiritual wrong, because he lowered the grade of manhood and womanhood in those that he fed. His benevolence promoted dependence. A rich man founded a place of labour for the poor who had nothing to eat and nowhere to sleep, and he said to them, "The Creator has given you hands to work with. Come ye, be men and women." And they went and worked and earned their living. Judgment is rendered in favour of that man, for he raised the spiritual grade of the poor. This is a charity that extends into heaven. Let thy charity be to the sick and helpless, but be wise in directing the able-bodied to help themselves. For all charity tends to lower the self-respect of the receiver and casts him lower in the grades of heaven. Certain one depends on alms, not having sickness, yet strong bodies. Nevertheless, they were aroused, they could support themselves. Were they given to them regularly, they depend on you. These become beggars in the lowest grades of heaven. That which thou give them accounts against thine own grade. Better it is for thee and for them that you arouse them for their degradation. To do this tenderly and mercifully is a great virtue. To do it cruelly is a great crime. Consider not so much what you shall do to raise your own grade, but what you can do to raise the grade of those within your reach. Remember, all men and women are brothers and sisters, and you shall labour to make them make themselves a glory unto the Creator.